My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 30 years old. 3 years ago, my sister destroyed my life with a single lie. She told our parents I had dropped out of law school. That wasn't true, but they believed her without question. They cut me off completely, blocked my calls, skipped my graduation, weren't at my wedding. For 3 years, I was nobody's daughter. Then last month, my sister was rushed to the emergency room where I work as chief of cardiothoracic surgery. When my mother saw my name on the white coat walking toward her daughter's bed, she grabbed my father's arm so hard it left marks. There were 2 daughters in the Mitchell house, but only one who mattered. My sister Emma is 4 years older, the performer, the charmer, the one who could work any room. Our parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell, middle-class folks from Boston, adored her completely. I was the quiet one, always buried in textbooks while Emma held court. Not rebellious, just invisible. There's a difference between being forgotten and never being seen at all. When I got into Harvard Law, something shifted. For the first time, Dad looked at me with something resembling pride. "Maybe you'll amount to something after all, Sarah." It wasn't much, but I held on to those words like a lifeline. Emma started calling more often after that, asking about my classes, my professors, my schedule. I thought she was finally seeing me as her sister. I was feeding her ammunition for what came next. 3rd year of law school, my roommate and best friend Jessica was diagnosed with terminal cancer. She had no family. I was all she had. I took a formal leave of absence to care for her. Everything was documented, legitimate, approved by the dean. I called Emma to explain. She was all sympathy and support. "Take all the time you need. I won't worry Mom and Dad unnecessarily." 3 days later, she called our parents with a different story entirely. The phone call came at midnight while I sat beside Jessica's hospital bed. Dad's voice was Arctic cold. Emma told us everything. The dropping out, the boyfriend, all of it. I tried explaining about the leave of absence, the documentation. Dad cut me off. "I don't call this house until you're ready to tell the truth." The line went dead. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. That's how long it took my parents to erase me. Over the next week, I called 14 times. The first few went to voicemail. Then I was blocked. I sent emails with my paperwork attached. No response. I mailed a handwritten letter. Returned unopened. I called my Aunt Susan, Dad's sister, the only one who'd ever treated me fairly. She tried to intervene, but Dad hung up on her too. Every attempt was rejected. This wasn't new. It was the pattern of my entire life compressed into its most brutal form. Every achievement they'd overlooked. Every time Emma's version was accepted without question while mine was dismissed. On the 6th day, I stopped calling. Not because I gave up, but because I realized they had chosen long ago. Emma just gave them permission to stop pretending. Jessica died on a Sunday morning in December. I was the only one there. No one from my family called. They didn't even know. I found a note Jessica had left in my textbook. "Finish what you started, Sarah. Become the lawyer I know you are. Don't let anyone, especially your own blood, tell you who you are." I went back to law school that January with no family support, no safety net. I worked part-time, took extra loans, ate cafeteria leftovers. But I graduated on time. I matched into a surgical residency program instead. Jessica's death had changed my path. I wanted to save lives, not argue cases. No one from Boston came to either graduation. At the hospital, I met Dr. Margaret Stone, my mentor and the mother figure I'd lost. I also met David Chen, a civil rights attorney. When I told him my story, he simply said, "You deserve better." We married in Margaret's backyard with 30 guests. David's mother walked me down the aisle. I sent an invitation to Boston. It came back unopened. 5 years passed. I became someone they wouldn't recognize. Chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Boston General. Winner of awards. Respected in my field. I had a house, a husband who made me laugh, and a dog named Hippocrates. but there's an ache that never fully fades, the hollow space where family should be. Then came that 3 a.m. page, Level 1 trauma. Female, 33, cardiac arrest post-MVA, ETA 6 minutes. I was dressed and driving within minutes. When I picked up the patient chart, I saw the name Emma Mitchell. Emergency contact Robert Mitchell, father. The ambulance arrived with Emma unconscious. Massive chest trauma. Behind the paramedics came my parents, looking older, frailer. Dad was shouting, "That's my daughter! Get me the chief surgeon!" The nurse pointed toward me in my scrubs, my badge clearly visible. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, MD, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery. Dad read my badge. Recognition moved through him like a physical tremor. Mom grabbed his arm, fingers digging into his sleeve. "Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell," I said, my voice clinical and calm. "I'm Dr. Mitchell, Chief of Surgery. Your daughter Emma sustained severe cardiac trauma. Surgery was successful. She's stable and in the ICU." Not Mom and Dad, Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell. I watched that land. Mom stepped toward me, arms lifting. "Sarah." "Oh my God, Sarah." I stepped back, polite but unmistakable. She froze, her hands slowly dropping to her sides. "You're a doctor," Dad said, voice like gravel. "I'm the chief of this department." But Emma said... What exactly did Emma say? He had no answer. For the first time in my life, my father was speechless. Later, when Emma woke up, she saw my badge and the color drained from her face. "Sarah." "Good morning, Emma. I'm your attending surgeon. You sustained severe cardiac trauma, but surgery went well. You'll make a full recovery. You're a doctor. I'm the chief of this department. Have been for 2 years." I watched the same recognition dawn that Dad had experienced. Even lying in a hospital bed with my sutures holding her heart together, Emma was calculating, trying to figure out how to spin this. "Sarah, listen. I can explain." "You don't need to explain anything to me." I nodded toward the glass door where my parents stood watching. "You need to explain it to them." My Aunt Susan arrived later that day with evidence she'd been collecting for 3 years. Screenshots of my emails, my law school documentation, photos from my medical school graduation. She'd kept everything, waiting for this moment. In Emma's ICU room, with the monitors beeping and the truth finally exposed, my parents faced what they'd done. Dad cried for the first time in his life. Mom doubled over in her chair when she read my old emails, including the one I'd sent the night before my residency graduation. "Mom, I graduated today. I wish you were here. I'm still your daughter." Emma lay silent, her performance finally over. There was no audience left to believe her. When my parents tried to apologize, I held up my hand. "Sorry is a word. It's a starting place, not a finish line. I need time." I set conditions. They had to go to family counseling. Emma had to tell the truth to every family member she'd lied to. Every aunt, uncle, cousin who spent 3 years thinking I was a dropout or worse. Months later, at the Physician of the Year gala, I won the award. Standing at the podium, spotlight warm, I kept it short. 3 years ago, I almost quit. Not because I couldn't do the work, but because I lost the people I thought I needed to keep going. What I learned is that the people you need aren't always the ones you're born to. Sometimes they're the ones who choose you. I looked at Margaret, at David, at my team. Then I looked at the back of the ballroom, last row. 2 seats my aunt had quietly arranged. My parents, Mom in a navy dress she'd probably bought that week, Dad in a tie he clearly hated. Both sitting with expressions I can only describe as grief and pride, waging war on the same face. "And sometimes," I said, "the ones you're born to find their way back. Late, but here." Emma sent an email to the entire family. 47 people, confessing everything. She had lied about my leaving law school, had fabricated evidence, had maintained the deception for years, had deliberately prevented our parents from learning the truth. She ended with, "Sarah never abandoned this family." I made sure they believed she did. That is entirely on me. The responses came in waves. Uncle Pete's wife called Susan in tears. Cousin David sent Emma a one-line reply, "I don't know who you are anymore." Our grandmother, Nana June, 89 years old, called me directly. "I'm 89 years old," she said, her voice paper-thin but furious, "and I have never been lied to so thoroughly by my own blood. Sarah, forgive an old woman for not seeing it." My parents started counseling. Mom took to it immediately. She'd been carrying the weight of her passivity like a stone. Dad struggled. He sat in the chair, answered questions in as few words as possible. The therapist told him his need to be right, his refusal to revisit a decision once it was made, had been the load-bearing wall of this entire disaster. Emma provided the lie, but Dad's pride cemented it into place. He didn't argue with her. That might have been the first sign of change. 3 weeks into counseling, Mom mailed me a letter, handwritten. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "I failed you," she wrote. "Not just when I believed Emma, but every time I chose peace over fairness. Every time I let your father's temper decide what was true. Every time I saw you standing in the doorway, quiet and waiting, and told myself you were fine, because it was easier than admitting I wasn't brave enough to fight for you. I read it at the kitchen table, Hippocrates asleep on my feet. David was in the next room pretending not to listen. I didn't cry, but I held that letter for a long time. Monica started therapy too, her own separate from the family sessions. We've had 3 meetings now, each one short, each one stiff, each one slightly more honest than the last. The 3rd time she said something that actually landed. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve it, but I want you to know I'm trying not to be that person anymore." I took a sip of my coffee, set it down, then said, "Show me. Words are cheap in this family. They always have been. Show me with time." She nodded, didn't push, didn't perform. That was new. Do I believe her? Honestly, I don't know. I've spent a lifetime reading Emma's performances, and I'm still not sure where her acting ends and her actual self begins. Maybe she's not sure either. Maybe that's what the therapy is for. But I believe in the possibility of change. That's all I can offer right now. She carries my surgical scar on her body, 7 inches across her chest, fading from red to white. Every time she gets dressed, every time she catches her reflection, she'll see the mark left by the sister she tried to erase. The sister who, when it mattered most, held a scalpel with steady hands and chose the oath over the anger. I carry her damage in my memory, 3 years of silence, lodged somewhere between my ribs. We're even, in the strangest, most painful way 2 sisters can be even. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, whether you're the one who was silenced or the one who did the silencing, I want to tell you something. The truth doesn't expire. It doesn't matter if it takes 3 days or 3 years. The truth has a patient way of showing up exactly when it's needed most. You can't rush it, but you can't outrun it either. I didn't get revenge on my sister. I didn't need revenge. I became someone who didn't need it, and that turned out to be the most devastating response of all. If you're waiting for your family to see you, really see you, stop waiting. See yourself first. Build the life you deserve with the people who show up. And when the others finally turn around, let them find a door that you control. You decide when it opens. You decide how wide. You decide who walks through. That's not revenge. That's architecture. Sunday morning, 1st week of February. Light snow falling outside the kitchen window, the kind that doesn't stick but makes everything look like it's being gently forgiven. I'm making French toast. David is grinding coffee beans, singing off-key to something on the radio. Hippocrates is stationed under the table, optimistic about crumbs. The doorbell rings. I wipe my hands on a towel and open the front door. Mom and Dad standing on the porch in their winter coats. Dad is holding a bottle of orange juice like he's not sure what to do with his hands. Mom has a tin of homemade cookies, her shortbread, the ones she used to make for every school event of Emma's, and none of mine. "Hi," Mom says, nervous, hopeful. "Come in," I say. "Coffee's almost ready." Dad steps inside, looks around the kitchen like he's cataloging everything. The house he's never been in, the life he almost never knew existed. He clears his throat. "Can I help with anything?" I look at him. My father, 62 years old, standing in my kitchen for the first time, asking permission to be useful. "You can set the table, Dad." He nods, goes to the cabinet I point to, takes out plates, counts them, looks at me. 4. He sets them down one by one, carefully like they might break if he's not gentle. David hands him coffee. Mom hugs me at the stove. Not a dramatic movie hug, just a quiet one. Arms around me, forehead against my shoulder, no words, holding on. Hippocrates thumps his tail. Snow falls outside. The French toast sizzles. It's not perfect. It's not the childhood I deserved, or the reconciliation movies promise. But it's real. And real is more than I had for a very long time. My name is Dr. Sarah Mitchell. I'm 30 years old and I am finally, slowly, carefully letting myself be someone's daughter again. 4 plates. It's a start.